Clerk, the time is 7:01. I'm going to call this committee of the whole meeting to order. Town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Regina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize this special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. Shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Councillor, can I get a motion to approve the agenda with the added delegation? Councillor Gallo, Councillor Weiss, any comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Weiss?
I may be having a indirect interest in the item 9.2. As I'm a member of Sport Aurora Board and Sport Aurora founded the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, and both of them are involved in this with some benefit to each of the organizations, I'd like to recuse myself for 9.2.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Seeing none. Community presentations, we have none. Delegations, we have two. First one, 6.1, Javed Khan, President and Chair, Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, regarding facility space allocation for Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. Mr. Khan, welcome. You have 5 minutes. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Town of Aurora staff, ladies and gentlemen, as well as everyone joining us on YouTube. On behalf of the Board of Governors, our 40+ dedicated volunteers, and our esteemed Hall of Famers, some of which who are here, and I'd like to point out Lois Thompson, one of our Hall of Famers, are with us tonight. I'm delighted to speak this evening in support of the proposal to enhance the current space allocated to the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame at our home located at 1400 Wellington Street East. Since our relocation in 2016, we've experienced significant growth in the number of volunteers, community engagement events, and of course, as the number of inductees. And with the upcoming class on November the 7th at our 11th annual induction celebration, we'll be celebrating more than 50 remarkable individuals who have made a lasting impact on sports and sports culture in our community. We're excited about the ongoing SARC renovations, particularly the addition of the new gymnasium. This expansion will not only attract more visitors, but also introduce a diverse new group of people to the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. These enhancements to the facility will be a wonderful benefit to both the SARC and our growing community. However, as highlighted in Mr. Furman's report, the construction work has led to the removal of key areas that were vital to our current operations. The space reductions will affect our ability to showcase the beautiful displays of our artifacts, as well as other important initiatives like our education programs and the development of our future Hall of Famer program. Mr. Furman has clearly outlined the challenges we face, especially with space limitations. As our organization continues to grow, it is crucial that we reallocate and expand our current space to ensure we can support our programs and community for years to come. With the introduction of our new digital wayfinder, we will enhance the visitor experience, allowing guests to engage more deeply with our inductees, learn about how they can get involved, and even nominate future sport legends. An expanded space would only further enrich this experience, helping us continue to inspire and engage everyone who visits. Folks, we are immensely proud that the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame is recognized by other municipalities for the quality of our programs. The strong partnership we share with the town, from the support of our current and past mayors and council to the hard work of our two incredible curators, have been key to our success. This collaboration is a true testament to the mutual respect and dedication we all have in promoting Aurora's sport history and culture. In closing, we strongly believe that Mr. Furman's proposal represents the ideal solution for both the Sport Aurora and the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. Together as two volunteer-driven organizations, we are poised to continue great things for our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Javed. Council, can I get a motion to receive the delegation? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kim, any questions for the delegate? Seeing none. Thank you very much for coming this evening, and we look forward to the induction ceremony. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next delegation, 6.2, Daniel Segal, Segal Construction regarding municipal housing development. So Segal, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely. You have 5 minutes and the floor is yours.
Thank you for hearing me today. My name's Daniel Segal. I'm a Tarion builder from Segal Construction. I've been doing laneway houses and garden suites in Toronto and Hamilton for the last few years. Fairly recently, I decided to approach municipalities about doing municipal housing development. Before you should be a draft resolution to consider doing municipally developed attainable housing. I want to just make a note here that there is a very distinct difference between attainable and affordable housing. What I'm proposing here is attainable. And so what that means is the type of housing that your kids or maybe your grandkids would move into when they first move out of their parents' house. Alternatively, it could be seniors downsizing or else workers coming to Aurora to do work projects. They need a place to live, something where they could afford the mortgage as well as their car payments, etc. The purpose of my delegation today is just to have the draft resolution forwarded to council for a report. Every municipality is different. I know that your particular needs might be very different than others. I want to show you the types of developments that I'm like to be working with other municipalities to do. Each one of these are prefabricated 680 square foot detached dwellings. And my construction time is somewhere between 4 to 6 months to get them into place. My recommendation is that the municipality consider through a municipal housing corporation purchasing a property that's suitable, chopping them up either through a condominium corporation or through a subdivision, and potentially working with planners if that is doable within the existing bylaws, or else maybe looking for an MZO if that's something that's palatable. With the idea that these houses be built, ready for occupancy, and sold publicly on something like MLS, so that the municipality is able to create the housing and sell them just as fast, so that their exposure to the housing project is limited. I think that's important because we all know that operating and capital budgets shouldn't be used for this type of thing. It keeps the risk down. So that's what I'm hoping to work with Aurora to develop. I also would like to share a few other things. So, oh, that's not the one I wanted to share. Here we go. So I think we all get the point that the federal and provincial governments want housing and they're not interested in doing the development of the housing. Here, that was the Building Faster Fund. It looks like Aurora has some interest in meeting the goals if they're interested in the funding associated with it. So clearly, I think this is in line. I think that finding a suitable location might be challenging, but I think it's important nonetheless. And with that, I think that the next step should be, if you're not already looking at housing projects, sitting down with me or other developers to see what the options are. I just want to point out that The reason I'm not building this is my cost of debt is somewhere around the neighborhood of 15%. Each one of these units has an IRR of 10%, so I'd be unwise to take this on. These types of projects have to be done through a partner with a low cost of debt, such as a municipality who could raise funds through various means, including debt or bond offerings, where your cost of debt's about 4.5%. With that, I'd be open to questions, comments. This is my fourth delegation today, so yeah, feel free to ask what you think is appropriate.
Thank you. Council, any comments? Are we sorry, any questions for the delegate? Someone like, no. Could I get someone to move to receive? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gallo. If there are no questions, I'll just make a comment. Mr. Segal, thank you very much for coming and presenting. I'm not sure through your presentations at municipal councils whether you've just been to single tier municipalities or regional local municipalities, because at the regional level, housing is under their purview, not under ours at the local level. The region already has essentially a municipal housing corporation. So I'm wondering if this would be best suited doing a presentation to the region as a whole.
So thank you for the great question. I've approached upper and lower tier municipalities, and frankly, what I'm proposing is outside their jurisdiction. So generally, affordable housing is upper tier municipality responsibility, and in most situation, there isn't an ownership component to any of the projects. The only organizations that do have an ownership component to attainable housing is something like Habitat for Humanity, and even then, they hold the mortgages, are very picky about the buyers. What I'm proposing here is a solution to housing in Ontario that keeps young people from leaving the province looking for greener pastures elsewhere, specifically because they can't find a place to start a family that makes any sense. I'm sure that you've heard this often, but when you buy your first house, it probably should be cheaper than renting, and you're able to accumulate equity on your investment. That's pretty much the Canadian dream, that you buy a home and that goes up in value. And even though your wages may not be adjusted to inflation, your real estate holdings are. Frankly, there's a lot of people considering moving out of the province who have already left, specifically because their housing options were not appropriate. And that's a shame, but that's the reality of the situation. And frankly, I don't think taking on a $4,000 a month mortgage to buy the average house makes a lot of sense for a new family who could easily just move elsewhere for an affordable living. Does that answer the question regarding the upper and lower tier?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Councillor Gardner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when I looked at your design, it looks really terrific. I think we don't have land. You did mention that. I don't think we have land for it. But I'm wondering, when you're talking about attainable, what are you, because the province hasn't defined it yet. So how are you defining it, please?
That's a great question. So generally, the price point, obviously you have to factor in land. And for a lot of these, so I've approached about half the municipalities in Ontario with the goal of getting all 444 by the end of October. In a rural setting, obviously land doesn't make up as much of a cost as in something like Aurora, where there are limited housing options. But even if you look at the land for sale, you're probably around $200,000 an acre if you're able to take down a large parcel and chop it up. That being said, my definition of attainable housing is something, so there's three definitions. The mayor of Southwest Oxford basically said it very nice. It's the newlyweds and nearly dead people who are your target market. So we're talking about people starting their families, and then people who are looking to downsize. And within each of those subgroups, you could further subdivide it. So you have your new workers, you have your new families, and then on the other side, where you have seniors housing, we're talking about people who might be in a 4 or 5 bedroom house looking to downsize to something on a single floor, less upkeep, less maintenance, and to move from maybe a suburb to more of a community living situation where if they go away on vacation, somebody could look after their dog. We're talking about community here, and we're talking about communities that are dynamic.
Councillor?
Thank you. I mean, it sounds like a great idea. Thank you for presenting it to us. I don't think we have any land that we could, be able to take advantage of it, but it's a very good idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
If I could just respond to your statement about land, I don't think having land is a prerequisite to doing these types of projects. Across Ontario, very few municipalities have service land that's undeveloped. And I think that we have to really be creative at looking at solutions to overcome that. And I think that there are solutions, and I'd be happy to go through them with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Segal. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Segal, for coming out this evening.
Thank you so much.
Council will move to the consent agenda. We only have one item. Councillor Thompson, did you want to move this to receive? Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Kim, is there any comments or questions regards to the consent agenda? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any items to pull? Well, we're doing, sorry, advisory committee meeting minutes. Someone like to move? Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Seconder. Councillor Gardner. Any comments or questions on the advisory committee meeting minutes? Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any items to pull? Councillor Thompson.
I assume we're pulling those that are presentations 9.1, 9.3, the delegation 9.2.
1, 9.2, 9. Okay. So 9.1, 9.2, and
Sorry.
10.1.
Yeah.
What
What
do you
else? 14.2.
Yeah, 14.2.
And I assume I don't have to pull my own motion.
You do, but
Well, then I'll pull my own
15.1.
motion, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others? Councillor Gallo?
10.2, please.
Okay. Any others? Councillor Garner?
14.1, 14.2, 14.3.
Anyone else?
I think, yeah.
Any others? I get a motion to approve remaining items minus 9.1, 9.2, 10.1, 10.2, 14.1, 14.2, 14.3, 14.5, and 15.1. So just the three. 11.1, 11.2, and 14.4. And 16.1. Someone want to move that? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Seconder. Councillor Ken. Yeah, I just want it on the screen just to make sure everyone can read it. So. Okay, everyone? 16. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Everyone is okay. I'm going to move I know we have quite a few people here for different items, but I am going to move 10.1 forward first because we do have the chief here. Just he can do his presentation and get going. I'm sure he's got better things to do. Make sure our town's safe. So Chief, so I'll put 10.1 on the floor, Central York Fire Services Cost Recovery Program Enhancement, and we have a presentation by Chief Volpe. Chief, welcome, and first time as the official chief. Congratulations.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's my third week on the job.
Yes.
Your Worship, thank you for allowing me to come visit yourself and members of council. Just want to provide a high-level overview of a fire report that was put forward last month. As you know, Central York Fire Services operates a cost recovery program with several avenues to recover costs for the services we provide, such as motor vehicle collisions, false alarms, gas leaks, etc. This report is aimed at enhancing the cost recovery program. There was an opportunity to enhance it, working with an agency, and CYFS took full opportunity of that. At year end, we will have completed 5 years with our cost recovery program, and we have revenued well over $500,000. The recommendations in that report, CYFS was seeking approval to enhance the cost recovery program by recovering firefighting costs for incidents involving property damage, i.e. fires, through insurance companies. We asked that we could establish a bylaw to authorize cost recovery for specific fire department responses. The set fees and the cost recovery through Firemark, as outlined in the updated fees and charge bylaw 2023-7076, is with the MTO rates. And I believe it's currently at $585. Just a little bit of background, high-level background on that report. Most insurance policies cover fire departments' costs under specific clauses, which coverage ranges anywhere from $500 to $25,000. Municipalities generally lack the experience to claim such revenues from insurance companies. However, there are external agencies that provide this service. Central York Fire conducted a competitive procurement process, and Firemark was the highest ranked proponent in that process. CYFS received JCC recommendation to move forward with the report to both Town of Aurora and Town of Newmarket Council. Firemark will be awarded a contract for 1 year term plus 4 one-year optional terms for a total of 5 years. The proposed cost recovery program would enhance current efforts to recover firefighting, generating additional revenue. Firemark uses a proprietary program to direct bill insurance companies for fire department services covered under these insurance companies. Firemark operates on a 70-30 split of recovered amounts, 70% to the municipality, 30% to Firemark. And charges no fees if recover is unsuccessful. No cost is passed to the property owners directly. All recoveries come solely from the insurance company. Just quickly on financial impact, Firemark fee is 30%, as I mentioned, 70% for the municipality. No cost if no recovery is made. There are times, sometimes Central York Fire responds to fires where their homeowners do not have insurance. If there is no insurance, then Firemark cannot proceed with any claim. The recoveries will not increase homeowners' insurance rates as they are part of the existing premiums. Estimated annual revenue for CYFS from the program is anywhere between $25,000 to $75,000. That is just an estimate, and I would have those year-end dates to JCC at year-end. As I mentioned, fees are based on the MTO rates. CWFS consulted with Town of Aurora, Town of Newmarket Financial Services. We seeked legal advice, and I just came here this evening just to share some high-level points about the report that was put forth last month.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Council, this is to receive for information. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Gallo, second. Councillor Gartner. Is there any questions for the chief or to the report? Councillor Gartner.
Through Mr. Mayor, it's not a question, but a comment, and very glad to hear about this. And I think it's a wonderful idea. And I especially like that they're not going to charge people who don't have insurance, and that the insurance rates won't go up. So I think it's a win-win. Thank you.
Anybody else? Chief, thank you for coming. Council, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. 9.1, because I got a presentation as well, right? So I'll go back to 9.1, mapping recreation for persons with disability, final plan presentation. We have a presentation to be provided by Jody Ball. Jody, welcome.
Mayor Marakis, members of council, town staff, and members of the community. My name is Jody Ball, and I am the director at J Consulting Group. I am joined by one of our core team members, Gabrielle Peters, who is joining us via Zoom. Gabrielle is a disabled writer, facilitator, speaker, and consultant, and is a leading voice on disability policy. I am thrilled and honored that Gabrielle has joined our team on this important work. And we are both very excited to be here today. Gabrielle and I and our team have had the pleasure of working with the Town of Aurora, fantastic staff members, Lisa Worth and Franco DeMarco, members of the town's Accessibility Advisory Group, as well as with community organizations and residents over the past year or so to develop mapping recreation for persons with disabilities. So we are grateful to have the opportunity to share with you a little bit about our process throughout the project, as well as present the strategic actions that make up that plan. So the initiative began, The initiative began as a recommendation within the 2023 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and is also supportive of the town's strategic plan in its goal of supporting an exceptional quality of life. The aim of this work has been to identify recreational program needs and preferences of persons with disabilities in the town of Aurora, and to develop a plan to address the identified needs. The plan itself is aimed at guiding decision-making with respect to recreation programming and services for persons with disabilities in the town of Aurora over the next 5 years. As we go forward in the presentation this evening, I want to acknowledge that person first and identity first language are both used in the disability community. We understand that there are strong preferences based on different experiences, history, and analysis, and that therefore the choice of each person with a disability must be respected. So for the purposes of this project, we alternate between person first and identity first language. We know that this work is important. It is also grounded in international policy, which outlines the rights of persons with disabilities. I want to highlight the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, adopted in 2006, that addresses the rights of persons with disabilities to participate in cultural life, recreation, leisure, and sport. Creating inclusive and accessible recreation means placing the responsibility of those designing and delivering the spaces, policies, and programs to ensure they are welcoming to all. Mapping recreation for persons with disabilities was completed in 2 core phases. The first was the identification of recreation needs among disabled people in Aurora, and the second was the development of goals and actions to address the identified needs and support recreational programming decision-making in the future. Hearing from the community was central to mapping recreation for persons with disabilities. The goal of the engagement process was to hear directly from disabled people, to have a better understanding of current needs, existing challenges and barriers, and also opportunities for creating more welcoming, safe, and accessible programming. In addition to hearing from persons with disabilities, the engagement process reached out to caregivers and family members, disability organizations and networks, the town's Accessibility Advisory Committee and Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, town staff, members of council, and York Region staff. Over the course of our initial engagement, we heard from approximately 335 residents and stakeholders, including at least 144 people with disabilities and over 16 community organizations. I also want to highlight the broad outreach and promotion that was facilitated by the town, reaching out to school boards, community agencies, and networks, posting on the town's website, social media, and through direct email. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on data. There is more in the report, in the plan itself. I did just want to highlight a couple numbers. First is newly released data from the 2022 Canadian Survey on Disability, showed 27% of Canadians aged 15 years and older has a disability. And looking at our seniors, this proportion is much higher at almost 40% based on some York Region data. Importantly, disability occurs at every age group and is increasing and includes a broad umbrella of persons with disabilities. Looking more specifically at the town, we have estimated that there are currently about 10,000 people with disabilities in Aurora, and this number is going up, projected to increase to just over 14,000 by 2036. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on sharing some of the feedback that we received in our community engagement. I will note that there is a full what we heard engagement summary report on our project webpage, but a few things that I will highlight. First, there is strong support for a recreation plan for persons with disabilities in Aurora. Program participants find town programs welcoming, and the summer and spring break programs are highly valued. Demand for programming with support is growing. Many disabled people are not participating in recreation activities who want to. There are financial barriers in accessing recreation. The built design in some facilities is not fully accessible. Transportation can also be a barrier in accessing programming. Lack of sufficient resources to offer inclusive programming. There are limited programs for youth and adults, and some caregivers and persons with disabilities may not be aware of the programs that are being offered by the town. And now for our plan and our promise, Mapping Recreation, Town of Aurora Recreation Plan for Persons with Disabilities. Based on our work and largely through the conversations and feedback from the community, we have identified 7 goals. I'm going to read them. They're small on the screen. Sorry about that. The first is to ensure a diversity of programming that is inclusive and adaptable to individual needs. The second is prioritize well-trained staff and adequate resources. The third is to address those financial, transportation, and accessibility barriers. 4 is to create volunteer and employment opportunities for persons with disabilities within recreation. Increase availability of adaptive sport and fitness equipment. Number 6 is enhancing communication and awareness of program offerings. And 7 is to foster and deepen partnerships with local organizations, businesses, and community groups. So within the plan, there are those 7 goals, and each of those goals has a series of actions within them. I am going to go through them fairly quickly right now. Under the first goal of ensuring programming is inclusive and adaptable to individual needs, the first action is to introduce a wide range of inclusive and adaptive programs that cater to various disabilities, interests, and age groups. Second is to implement regular training for staff on inclusivity, disability awareness, and adaptive techniques. 3 is offering try-it days for individuals to experience different activities and find what best suits their needs. And 4 is to develop a feedback mechanism so that we are continuously adapting programs based on feedback and evolving needs. Goal number 2, prioritize well-trained staff and adequate resources. Establish a continuous professional development program for staff that's focused on inclusivity, emergency preparedness, communication strategies, and specific disability accommodations. 2, to ensure that the resources, so staff, equipment, facility, and budget are adequate to meet the individual needs of participants. And 3, to create a volunteer program that includes people with disabilities to offer peer support, share experiences, and assist in program delivery. Under number 3, we have exploring opportunities to make programs more affordable to individuals with disabilities. 2 is to advocate to local transportation services to help improve accessible transportation options to and from recreational facilities. And 3 is to develop a strategy to review and implement the recommendations from the town's facility audit to continue to address the physical barriers and ensuring that all town spaces are accessible. The next one is to create volunteer and employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. And the first action here is to develop a dedicated outreach program to recruit volunteers and employees with disabilities. 2, to implement a mentorship program that pairs experienced individuals with disabilities in leadership roles with those interested in volunteer or employment opportunities in recreation. And the 3rd is to explore the expansion of the town's Accessibility Advisory Committee and ensure that it is a lens for all major town planning and communication initiatives. Number 4, increasing the availability of adaptive sport and fitness equipment. So looking at funding opportunities, donations, and partnerships to purchase adaptive equipment. 2, to organize adaptive equipment demonstration days for participants to try out equipment and provide feedback. And develop a training program so that we ensure that staff are knowledgeable about proper equipment use, maintenance, and safety protocols. Enhance communication and awareness. There's 6 here. The first is to develop a communication strategy to support program awareness and engagement. The second is to host an annual expo to promote awareness and community engagement. And 3rd is to continue to create accessible information materials in various formats and languages to reach a diverse audience in conjunction with strategies from corporate communications. Also, create a new full-time permanent program coordinator position dedicated to persons with disabilities. Next, implement a centralized accessible webpage where participants can easily find information about programs, register, and provide feedback. And consider further enhancements to the town's recreation guide to ensure easy access to information needed to guide programming decisions. And our last one, goal 7, to foster and deepen partnerships with local organizations, businesses, and community groups. So work with those groups to continue to identify program needs and opportunities to collaborate on program delivery. Partnering with local organizations and experts to provide specialized training and resources for staff. There's a lot out there. And 3, partner with community organizations, disability advocacy groups, and local sports clubs to explore opportunities to bring additional resources and expertise to town programming. So I went through 7 goals and 25 actions. I know that's a lot. There is more within the plan. I just have one more slide on the implementation plan. So to support those 7 goals and those 25 actions, we have also developed an implementation plan, which is included in the main report. The implementation is intended to support the full achievement of the town of Aurora's mapping recreation for persons with disabilities. The implementation plan, puts forward timelines, potential resource needs and partnerships, and key indicators so that we know we are achieving the outcomes that we set out to achieve. Importantly, it is intended that the implementation plan be reviewed on an annual basis and updates as required. As mapping recreation for persons with disabilities moves forward, it will be up to town staff to bring forward items to council as appropriate for budget and other support needs. The overall leadership and coordination of the plan will rest with the Community Services Department while seeking the advice and guidance from the town's Accessibility Advisory Committee and Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, and additional engagement with other members of town staff and community partners as needed. On behalf of Gabrielle and myself and other members of our consulting team, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to work with you, town staff, and the community of Aurora on this important work. I know we are coming to our time. Just as we conclude, I would like to take one more minute to read you something Gabrielle provided me. She is joined via Zoom. So in her words, as a disabled consultant who had the privilege to work on this consultation, I want to applaud the mayor and council, and through you, the staff and people of the town of Aurora, for their commitment to inclusion, which was evident throughout this process. With the support of your staff, we established and met important benchmarks in gathering of information. Guided by the disability rights movement clarion call of nothing about us without us, we ensured that the majority of feedback came from disabled people. This is often not the case, even in consultation about disability. Due to marginalization, inaccessibility, isolation, and prior negative experiences, reaching out to disabled people requires additional time and effort. We contacted many community organizations, grassroots groups, as well as larger disability organizations. Some of the smaller groups expressed unexpected delight to have been thought of and included. In this way, your consultation process already moved the dial of inclusion in Aurora. As a disabled consultant, it is not unusual to be met with resistance, but instead the staff worked with us in a deliberatively thoughtful manner to ensure that everyone felt welcome. They also welcome new knowledge and ideas, including my suggestion of an accessibility concierge, a model I developed that addresses frequent frustrations experienced by disabled people and their families. If I had to pick a word for this consultation, I would choose integrity. I feel incredibly proud to have been part of this work, and I urge you to feel likewise. Thank you for the opportunity and for your commitment to inclusion of disabled people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Councillor, can someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Gallo, Councillor Kim, any comments or questions to Jody or to the report? Councillor Weiss?
Hey, Jody, thank you very much for the well-written report. Shows a lot of understanding and empathy towards what we're trying to do here. Could you give me a little bit of a deeper dive, though? When you talk about disabilities, are you considering all types of disabilities? I see a lot of it having to do with equipment and physical disabilities. Can you identify out of those 10,000 people that you identify with the disability in Aurora, what percentage of them may have a physical versus an emotional versus intellectual disabilities? And do you just have that information and it'll be presented to us a little different because it makes a difference on what types of disabilities we're working with?
Jody?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. I'll start by just saying that our definition is broad, quite broad, and includes all forms of disabilities. And that was the intent behind the plan and behind all of the recommendations within it. Regarding the 10,000 people, I don't have a breakdown of the types of disabilities that those 10,000 people have. There are some additional stats within the report, not based on Aurora data, though. We don't have that breakdown. If you did want more information, StatsCan does have a breakdown of disability types, but our plan is aimed at the broad umbrella of people with disabilities.
Right. Through you again, Mr. Mayor, again, the it says in here that the school boards delivered the plan, the draft plan, but were they consulted in advance with respect to the number of children that are in our schools right now with disabilities? Because I know they map those very closely because they're responsible for making sure they get the education they deserve. Have you, did you talk to them about the number of children that have disabilities and the types? Through you, Mr. Mayor?
Jody?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor. No, our approach to the school boards was in an outreach and promotion to create some awareness that the work was being undertaken, to ask them in whatever way they could to share information that the project was underway, that we had a project website, that we were looking for feedback from families and residents. So I'm not aware of how many people would have done the survey, for example, through the schools. Our engagement with the schools was as an outreach to ask them to share the information about the project.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor.
That's enough.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Hi. Thank you for a comprehensive report. I don't know if very comprehensive is, but it is. And you mentioned in it that, and I think you're talking about Aurora, that people who are over 65, the disability there is mostly mobility because of pain or flexibility. So it's, and that's, you know, when you see the accessible parking stickers, it one thinks of mobility as the main disability. Is that for Aurora, or is that the general?
The statistic that I
Joey?
shared, sorry.
Oh,
thank you,
through you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The statistic that I shared with you in the slides is based on some York Region data. So that would be for the whole region and not specific to Aurora. To your point, Councillor, yes, as we age, you know, we do have increased mobility, but but other forms of disability, cognitive as well. But that specific data is for the region. And I do believe they have some data out there that does break it down a little bit further into different types of disability at a regional level. Again, not for the town.
Councillor.
Thank you. And, you know, I'm not used to thinking of disability in the terms when the 15 to 24-year-olds, it's mostly a mental health and learning disability. So I'm glad that we are including all of that in when we're looking at disability. There's no financial component to this. And I believe it says it would be part of the budget. But do you have any idea of what a dedicated disability coordinator, what that would cost? And also, were you thinking of any particular kind of equipment that we would need in our fitness centers, or just in general that we would have to purchase?
For you.
Joey.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I don't have a cost. Our recommendation is a full-time position. I don't have a cost for that. And as far as the equipment, no, we didn't put any specific equipment or costing. So that would be up to staff, I think, to come back with the programs that they want to see implemented, maybe first, and maybe there's some programs later on, and then putting some costing around any equipment that would be needed for those new programs.
Thank
Councillor.
you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, it's easy to say we want to do this, and there's a lot of information in here. So thank you. Then the next component is how much will it cost, as you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation and the work everyone did on the plan itself. My question is similar to Councillor Gardner's. I did note that in terms of the action items, you did identify the hiring of a full-time position specifically for dedicated to persons with disabilities. And I was hoping you can kind of expand on it, only because we're just entering into the budget season now. You have put in the report in terms of a timeline is the short-term 1 to 2 years. But perhaps you can speak to the need and why council should be looking at doing that immediately as opposed to maybe a year or two down the road.
Joey.
You, Mr.
Through you,
Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. The full-time permanent program coordinator position is probably what I would say is the most important recommendation in this entire plan. They're all important, but that one is key. And it's key because that's going to help with many of the other recommendations. It will help with making programming more welcoming. It will help provide a feedback loop between staff and people that want to use the programs. We heard over and over again in the consultations that people don't always know where to ask the questions, or they see a program, but they're not sure if it's really suitable for them or for their child or for their parent or for their friend. And so they want a little bit more information, and having that go-to is vital. I don't want to put Gabrielle on the spot, but Gabrielle, this is really her idea. And she is a champion of it. So if you would like to do better justification to it, Gabrielle, I welcome you to.
Gabrielle?
Sure, I'll try. If first of all, going back to it sort of relates back to the question of, there's a lot of talk of equipment, but did you include other disabilities? And a core component of inclusion and accessibility work is the understanding of the broadness of disability, and that the majority of disabled people have more than one disability. So not only, so we actually were specific in one of the grassroots groups that we included and reached out to was self-advocates, neurodivergent self-advocates. So, and among other disabilities that are often referred to as invisible. So one of the things that comes up often is that those kinds of supports that are needed and the information and the transfer of information back and forth is one of the big barriers. And that's where this full-time staff person, this idea of a concierge, or however you wish to frame it, would assist in creating the inclusion so that they're not having to, so there's an ease of information transfer, a consistency, so there's not redundancy, so that there's a growth of understanding that can be shared with your broader staff and with the town. So it really is actually particularly relevant to people with those kinds of disabilities. Was that helpful?
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Gabrielle. Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Gabrielle, thank you. Jody, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for all the hard work. And I'm sure it's going to be exciting for us to be implementing a lot of these initiatives through the plan. So thank you for all the hard work. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 9.2 is the facility space allocation for Aurora Sports Hall of Fame and Sport Aurora. Someone want to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Gallo. Any comments or questions? Call the Councillor Thompson.
A question, just really a comment. Perhaps between now and council at the end of the month, while there was a floor plan provided, with some identification of where these are, maybe we could have something a little bit more descriptive, or
Visual.
some visuals, some pictures or something, or rendering or something, just to give a little bit more context. I'm certainly supportive of it, but it was just hard to just decipher the floor, the schematics that were provided. So,
Mr. Segal, could you provide that for council?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. We'll certainly do our very best. I know some of it's still behind hoarding, but we can certainly work with the contractor and even work with the images that they have provided us to demonstrate what walls on the images we have that could be shown. AFLC, we certainly can, because it's obviously a live building right now. We can do that.
Thanks. I'm just a little bit more visual and just helps me. So thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner? You okay? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that conversations with Sport Aurora, that they're okay with the relocation of most of their things to the Aurora Family Leisure Complex through you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know John Furman has had a number of conversations with Laurie Mueller, their executive director, and then following up with that with our councillor as the Sport Aurora representative. And the feedback we have from their board and feedback from that those conversations they are supportive of what we are recommending in this report.
Councillor?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 10.2, this is the 2025 Council Committee meeting schedule. Councillor Gallo, you pulled this. Did you want to move it?
You did? Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Just
Seconder?
have some questions.
Seconder? Councillor Reese, thank you. Councillor Gallo, go ahead.
I just wanted to know whether there's some wiggle room with some of them. One of the ones that stood out for me is September, and I had a quick conversation with the clerk, and I don't know if whether or not we're moving to changing all of them to the second Tuesday, and then public planning the third Tuesday, and then the council meeting the fourth Tuesday. Is that on the table, or is the calendar that's on the agenda? Because if it is, then my question is moot.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the proposed schedule would be to have the committee, if the mayor agrees to move the committee of the whole meetings, which is under his authority with strong mayor powers. If those move to the second Tuesday of the month, public planning to the third, council to the fourth, the specific instance you brought up in September, we would not meet the day after that, or we wouldn't have a scheduled meeting. The proposed first week would be for council education sessions, special meetings of council, but nothing scheduled on the first Tuesday.
Councillor?
So to be clear, the schedule that's in here is not necessarily what we're gonna, because it doesn't show.
Mr. Clark?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is confusing, Councillor. Yes. So schedule one is attachment one is the proposed schedule without the mayor's change. If the mayor moves committee of the whole to the second Tuesday, attachment two becomes the meeting schedule for next year.
Got it.
Councillor?
And sorry, I don't have the recommendation. Is the recommendation schedule too?
Mr. Clark?
Again, the confusion. The recommendation is attachment one, but that's because that's council's authority to deal with public planning and council. The mayor's absent the mayor's authority to deal with committee of the whole.
Councillor?
Okay. I'm in favor of attachment two.
Yes. Okay.
And not the way we currently do it. It was really, for me, it was only September, and not only for me, it was more for staff that the day after Labor Day to have our first meeting come back after not meeting for a while. I suggest is probably not the best idea, and I was going to propose changing that. But if we're changing all of them, and I guess the main difference is that we will have only 2 weeks between committee of the whole and council.
Mm-hmm.
And the question amongst us, is that enough time? We used to have only 1 week. So as it stands that way, I'd be in support of it.
Any other comments, questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. So we are moving to 14.1. It's the automated speed enforcement pilot program and community safety zones. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one. Did you want to move the recommendation? Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Weiss, thank you. Councillor Gardner, go ahead.
I think this makes sense. What I heard in the last election before anything about taxes was the speed of the cars in the neighborhoods. So I think this is an important safety feature. I have a more general motion pending from maybe 10 years ago. And we were waiting to be able to have the facility to keep the money in-house as opposed to paying it to the region. So I think this is a very good start. I thank staff for, I don't know if they've been listening to counselors or residents or just, this is just best practices, but I'm in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Reese.
Yes, thank you. I'm really happy to see the number 2 where we're designating the areas in front of the schools. And so just for clarification, through you, Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, that's at 4 additional community safety zones?
Through Mr. Mayor, right now, I think the report identifies we have 4 community safety zones identified. If council adopts this recommendation, we'll identify all schools. It'll be a total of 17 as community safety zones.
Great.
Councillor.
It's needed, and I want to thank you for bringing that forward. That's all for this time.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions for the first time? Councillor Gardner, second time.
Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, there under financial implication, there's just the cost of the community safety zone signs. But of course, there's going to be cost for the cameras and the administrative part. I'm thinking that we actually might bring in more money than we spend, but do you have any indication or any thoughts on how the financial part is going to work out?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Council Gardner. So that's part of the second recommendation that we will bring back a further report to detail the implementation of the automated speed enforcement cameras, the logistics, and the financial aspects of that. So that'll be subject of a future report.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. And it would be interesting to compare it to the we had a report on this a few years ago, and we actually had costing at that time of cameras and administration. So that might be helpful to you. I don't know which one of these former reports it is, but I found it very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kim, first time.
Thank you. I am in agreement with the recommendation, and I think it's long overdue. I recall that one resident communicated to all of us a few months ago where there was a speed camera somewhere. I believe it was Young Wellington, and he had the unfortunate instance where he received a speeding ticket with an automatic camera, but he did not realize that he received a speeding ticket until about 4 or 5 weeks later when it was mailed to him. And since then, apparently he's sped multiple times. And so the bills kept on going. And so he was implying that if he had received and known that he was speeding the first try, then it would perhaps have changed his habits and not have the additional tickets. So my question is through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff is, will this be electronically generated tickets so that the offender will receive a ticket in a reasonable time frame so that he doesn't offend 4 or 5 more times, or is it going to be through slow mail?
Sure.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's a concept, and we can lay that out in a future report. But I think the region has their automated speed zones along the regional roads in front of schools. So that's probably where he's receiving tickets. But if we do move forward with implementation of the speed cameras, we're required to put out the signs identifying that there's it's a community safety zone, reduce speeds, and the increased fines if you exceed the speed. So those signs will go out in advance of the actual cameras being deployed.
Councillor.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that it's not going to be automated, but they should have visual indication that this is what's happening, and they should be aware. To you, Mr. Mayor.
So you, Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, yeah, there'll be automated cameras, And, if you exceed the speed limit, the owner of the car will get a ticket. But moving forward, we will install the signs that we've have a community safety zone with increased fines to warn drivers in advance of actually installing those signs. So there will be some notice for drivers that we've established a community safety zone, and there'll be cameras installed at a future date.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Romano, just forgot to Councillor Weiss for a second time. Will we be putting the word slow down on the road as well, similar to what the region's doing? Is that something that we could look at?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, it's something we can definitely look at. We weren't intending to do that. I mean, the region has done it just because, I mean, their roads are arterial roads, the volume of traffic is higher, but we can identify those as options when we report back.
Thank you. So I was just
For the
going
next
to
phase.
respond to Councillor Kim and say, if you're driving along young and you don't realize you need to slow down, the road says slow down, there's signs, big bright orange says new camera. It's pretty well known that camera is there. I think if you don't see it, it's you might not be looking while you're driving. So, but I appreciate the fact that you could get a ticket and not realize. Councillor Weiss.
Just for the public's information, this is going to be 24/7, correct? Because I've heard from other residents who have received tickets outside of school hours that why are we ticketing them outside of school hours? And my response is you shouldn't be speeding no matter what time of day it is. However, the question is going to come up. So this is 24/7. This is all day, every day. Through you.
Mr. Romano.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding of the speed cameras and the signage that the region has installed, the signs identify just during the periods. So between 9 and 5, I think. So the cameras, I don't believe, are operating before or after that 9 to 5 window. Again, as part of our pilot project, we can spell that out and have that discussion, when we report back. But currently, the regional cameras, I think, are operational just during that window of 9 to 5, I believe it is, or 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Councillor.
All right. Well, and that leads me to my next point about communication. It's not just what happens on the road sign. I hope our communications department is going to be helping all of our people to do this, because I can see that if they're not informed through a variety of different methods, then there'll be some complaining about it, even though they are speeding. And I don't have a lot of sympathy for that. However, and I do agree with the mayor about the use of slow down. I've seen it on the main street. It reminds people of doing that. And in fact, I had a resident today asking about that being used as perhaps a traffic calming mechanism on our own roads and through our own residences. So I'd like to have that noted that perhaps this would be put into our traffic calming measures. That's all for me.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 14.2, this is a request for increased capital budget authority for capital projects SO0079 Water and Wastewater Master Plan. Councillor Thompson, you pulled this. Did you want to move the recommendation? No? Pardon? Okay. Thank you. Seconder? Just receiving. Councillor Weiss, thank you. Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Questions with regards to it. So I guess through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, originally we approved the project for 300,000. It's come before us because they're looking for additional funding. But where I'm having challenges are you're looking for a 40% increase, and it says that the factors are inflation rates and increased labor prices. Can we get a little bit more details about why the need for the significant step up in terms of the capital authority for this budget project? And secondly, can we also provide some details around the bids? It did say it went to an RFP process. Are you able to provide members of council or myself, like how many people did we have bid on it? Can we see the other bids in terms of what was put forward, in terms so that at least for myself, I can help understand the need for the substantive increase in this and what the other choices were.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can ask Nancy Fleming, our manager of engineering capital delivery, to come down and address some of those questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Were you anticipating them? Did you have staff here to?
Nancy, welcome.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Thompson, thank you for your questions. So we received 2 bids for this RFP proposal. The other bid was did not pass our technical requirements. It's a 2-envelope process. So it didn't meet our technical threshold to undertake the scope of work that we had laid out.
Councillor.
So in other words, we only have one bid in front of us.
Nancy.
So in terms of this work, when we originally brought the 2024 business case to council for consideration, we did not include the flow meters and hydrant testing to calibrate our current water and wastewater models. Those are desktop analysis right now, but we want to do some actual in-field investigation on our water meters to make sure we're meeting our fire flow requirements for our communities, in addition to putting flow meters into our maintenance holes on our sewer mains to make sure that we are actually getting real-time data, especially with the flows that we're starting to see in our high weather flow events. That will be able to feed into our models. That will be a better indication of what we need to be doing moving forward for our capacity requirements.
Councillor.
Thank you. I guess I'm a little surprised to hear that we only had one organization bid for it, or at least one that met the criteria. I'm assuming that when we talk about a waste and wastewater master plan, that this is a common request for municipalities, and there must be numerous firms out there that do this kind of work. Was there any consideration to go back out to tender to see if there would be more interested bidders?
Nancy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
So we actually extended the timeline for, we usually have them out for 4 to 5 weeks. We extended an additional week to give proponents the additional time. What we're seeing in general in terms of capital delivery now for RFPs and requests for tenders and studies is that the demand outweighs the supply. So we're just not seeing those, especially when you have larger municipalities that have larger tenders and larger proposals out at the same time. There's just not enough consultants and contractors that are bidding. So we're seeing that's a little bit of the situation we're in as well. And then we're just seeing larger rates right now for services because of that.
Councillor.
Thank you. Well, so I guess part of the rationale for the increases is also just really wasn't much of a competitive process if we only had one bid.
Nancy.
It's just we're just not seeing those large numbers. Like, I've been in this industry for 24 years now, and honestly, we used to get 5, 6 proponents, but we're lucky now if we're seeing 2 on average.
Thank you. I really appreciate that additional information.
Thank you, Nancy. Any other comments, questions? You'll put the recommendation on the floor? Okay, thank you. Councillor Weiss, you okay with that? Putting the recommendation back on the floor? Thank you. Yes, so just make that a friendly one. Okay. Seeing no others, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 14.3, proposed amendments to parking bylaw, various locations in town's downtown area. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this. Did you want to move the recommendation? Someone want to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Weiss, thank you. Councillor Gardner, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have some concerns with respect to the attachments. I guess my primary concern is if we allow the 4-hour parking, how how is that going to affect the stores along? Actually, I misread this. It has nothing to do with Yonge Street. Is that correct?
Yeah, Ms. McDougall, go ahead.
Through Mr. Mayor, that is correct. They're not looking to adjust anything on Yonge Street.
Thank you. I
Councillor?
don't have to worry about the stores. So now, I get complaints from residents when cars are parked for a long time on their residential streets. That's in my ward. I imagine that in this area, it's going to be a similar concern because we do have a fair number of residential streets that we're going to allow the 4-hour limit. And I suppose this is something we could try. And then if we, through Mr. Mayor, and then we get a lot of complaints from the residents, because I think this is going to limit, it's a great reason to allow the 4-hour parking, but it's also going to limit the residents on this street to have their own visitors parking and their own street parking. So actually, that's just all I'm going to say for now until I hear, well, it's Councillor Weiss's area, so I'd like to hear what he thinks on this.
I was just going to add, it's only moving from 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
And the rest of the town allows parking essentially all day. In this area, we've limited to 3, but we're just moving it to 4. But, that just, Councillor Weiss.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. My concerns on this, first of all, about communication to residents. Is there something that's going to go out to the residents suggesting this, because it does, parking is a big issue in that area because of the adjacent GO, and it's a catchment area for parking for the town square. So just want to make sure that the communication is direct and clear, and the rationale for it is direct and clear as well, because I don't want to wander around and do that all day long.
Ms. Smith? Ms. Smith?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Yes, we will work on communication with our bylaw team and make sure all the signage is there and that communication is out to residents.
Great, thank you. And I think this is a relatively easy one to go from 3 to 4, but it doesn't resolve the problem that we have in that area where we have a number of parking. For example, on Metcalf Street, where you have both parking on north and south sides, and there's some concern by the residents about access during emergencies, particularly in fire. And I'm wondering who, maybe through Ms. Fleming or someone, could give us an idea of the risk that we may be taking in Metcalf area particularly, but also in Larmont where I live. And I noticed that Larmont isn't even on this list. So it stays at 3 hours as opposed to 4, even though it's in the 400-meter catchment area. So a couple of questions, and I'll leave it through you, Mayor, to direct it somewhere. Nancy, I shouldn't have said who, but maybe if it's you, I don't know.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So just to be clear, the proposal here is really just an interim measure until we complete our townwide parking study that's currently underway. And that will be completed by the end of next year. Then we'll report back and there may be recommended changes. So again, the increased allowance from 3 to 4 is just an interim measure until we complete our townwide parking study. And again, based on, attachment 2, the change is really only going to affect those areas identified within that 300-meter radius from Yonge Street.
Councillor?
Sorry, you said 300 meter?
300 meters.
I thought it was a 400, so my error. I'm sorry. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, second time.
Thank you. I guess to your comment, Mr. Mayor, the problem that I have in my area is that people are parking. Many residents would like the parking to be 2 hours because people are parking and then taking Viva. And so there's a development that hasn't allowed enough parking. So they're using the residential streets as overflow parking. So they're waiting for the townwide parking study, hoping that it'll go down to 2 hours. But so that's where I'm coming from. If I'm glad to know it's a pilot study, and I think it might help the parking situation for the town square. Yeah.
Thank you. And I appreciate it. I'm just going to ask you, so I just want to be clear on this because I'm a little bit confused by your comments, Councillor. Does the south end have any 3-hour limits on the roads right now for parking? In Ward 3? Mr. Segal, do you know? I know we're limited as well what areas do have 3-hour limits. Right now I believe you can park there overnight as well. In those areas not during the winter, obviously, but. Sarah?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to look into it, but if you'd like, I can either send an email to council or I can look at it for the council meeting.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the majority of the 3-hour limit that we've imposed, and Councillor, if you recall, we did that when we were looking at GO Station patrons parking especially in our downtown core area, and they were there all day, and that was a concern. And so therefore we implemented a 3-hour limit in that area. Otherwise, most of the town does not have a 3-hour limit, including Ward 3. If residents would like to see that, I would suggest either through the parking study or a motion to come forward. Sure, absolutely.
There is a parking limit because bylaw, I mean, I could be wrong, but bylaw has come out when the residents complain and try and mark the tires. And so I'm assuming there is a limit.
Okay. Now, and I'm going to stop there because we're straying into a totally different area of town that's not part of this.
Okay.
This thing, but yeah, we can have that offline and we'll get the information from Mr. Segal about where 3-hour limits are within our town.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 14.5. Doors open, registration 2025. Councillor Weiss, you pulled this. Did you want to move the recommendation? Just to receive? Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Kim, go ahead, Councillor Weiss.
Yeah, with respect to doors open, I have a couple of questions. In page 1 of the report, the 4th bullet says independent events, and it doesn't describe who has done independent events successfully in other municipalities instead of the Ontario Trust. So I'm wondering if we can get an example of an independent group that would take on doors open through you to perhaps Mr. Amuno.
Mr. Amuno?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. And I think what we mean by independent events is if we decide not to register formally through Doors Open, where we have to meet their specific criteria with respect to following their programs and, have a certain number of sites. I think it's over 11 sites to host formally Doors Open. We would do our own independent Doors Open event. Other municipalities have been doing that since 2019. And an example would be, and we've had a great support with the members of the community doing our own walking tours, perhaps throughout those sections of downtown. We could also identify, a handful of heritage sites that could host and be open for that day's event. So it's really just doing our own town event as opposed to formally going through Doors Open and meeting their pretty stringent requirements. And it is a huge time commitment from a staffing perspective, just setting up through Doors Open. It's a good 6-month, 8-month work through setting it up. At this point, we've got limited staff resources to dedicate to that type of an event, but certainly doing our own sort of event is something we can certainly undertake.
So that's a possibility. Thank you. Then when looking at the report, it seems to me to be involved with Ontario Heritage Trust that you get advantage of some of their advertising, promotion, and marketing that goes out all over the place. Possibly insurance, but I assume that the insurance is something that we can do. So I guess I'm really looking at what is the benefits of registering with the OHT as opposed to doing our Made in Aurora solution here, because we've seen them before and they've been very successful. It mobilizes volunteers, the Historical Society, and other people who are very interested in heritage. So I'm just wondering if you can enlighten me just a little bit through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Romano?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, the benefits going through doors of the Ontario Heritage Trust event is their promotional material and their marketing, and they develop their brochures, etc. However, even when we do register with Doors Open, the organization is all done here with the town. In the past, it's always been planning led and working with the Heritage Advisory Committee, getting host sites and volunteers to help set up that whole day's event. So yeah, we wouldn't necessarily have the advantage of the Ontario Heritage Trust, programming and brochures, but I mean, we've got a lot of experience in other, avenues where we can get the word out if we do our own event.
Councillor?
So we don't go through the OHT, then we'll ask for expression of interests from other parties within the town who may be interested in this, because I know it's a valuable thing to do. And it certainly, heritage is an important part of our community. So I'd hate to see us not do something when we have expressions of interest and can get other people involved. So have you heard about expression of interests in the past year or two when we've not been active with it through you?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, certainly there are members on the Heritage Committee that would certainly assist if we undertake our own event, and staff within planning and perhaps cultural services. And we would then reach out to the committee at large and some of the property owners to see if they're interested. So I'm sure that would still have a successful event if we ran our own sort of independent event on whatever day we decide to go with.
Thanks. That's all.
Councillor?
That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? We're just receiving. Just let everyone know. Councillor Gallo, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just confused on how we're going to move forward. If we just receive, does that mean we will not be having any type of event?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my suggestion would be then provide direction, and we have provided in the alternative section that should council not authorize registration for the in-person Doors Open event, that alternative options could be considered. So if council wants to just direct staff to undertake our own independent event without going through Doors Open, we'll certainly do that and come back with a work plan report at a future date for council's information.
Councillor?
And just to be clear, the last one was in 2019. The physical one was in 2019. Was that in collaboration with the Ontario Heritage Trust for you, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Romano?
Yes, it was.
Councillor?
And is it the opinion of the advisory committee to move forward with an in-person versus virtual in collaboration with the Ontario Heritage Trust?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the advisory committee expressed support for the town to pursue an in-person Doors Open event. So to register with Doors Open and meet their criteria and their programming, etc.
Councillor?
Not exactly sure why we would change that. We were pretty successful in the past. The committee is recommending that. I would say we move forward status quo like we did in 2019 and do the event in collaboration with Ontario Heritage Trust and in sync with our own committee.
Would you like to put that forward?
I would.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson. Any comments or questions? Councillor Thompson.
Through to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, you give the statistics for the physical tours back when in 2018, 2019, but you indicated when we went to the digital presence, we don't have any data because we don't track the website visits, but it must be available. We must be able to compile or reach out to be it Heritage Trust or some of those sites, or to try and get some statistics to show what kind of uptake there was when we moved to a digital format versus an online or in person. And if so, could we not also provide that kind of statistics for council? Through you to Mr.
Romano.
Through Mr. Mayor, we'll certainly take a look at see what we can get, what we can gather with respect to that information. And I just want to be clear, Mr. Mayor and Council, that my suggestion that if we don't go through formal doors open event, that if we did our own independent event, it would still be in person, but sort of at reduced, and that we're thinking of doing a walking tour and perhaps trying to identify a certain number of sites, perhaps not the minimum required by doors open, which is 10 or 11, if it hasn't gone a little higher this year. But
thank you. I can remember taking part in some in the past and visiting some really unique sites within the town, and it'd be nice to bring it back.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? I need that. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Councillor Gallo, you still have the floor. All right. So I'm back to the main motion as it was amended. I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries.
Sure. Thank you. This is not the first time a motion like this has come before council. It was brought before in 2015. We've talked about it a long time with regards to the need. I'm bringing it back because if members of council remember, we had representatives from the region here, and they were talking about their capital plans and infrastructure, and follow-up conversations I had with them. It was suggested by them that we reintroduce that motion to continue to put it back at the top of mind so that we can work with the region to get them and ourselves to advocate for the construction of the interchange. Because at the end of the day, it is the jurisdiction of the province. But, we need to get the region on board with us to agree that there is a definite need. And we need to continue to push for this, because as we've seen countless times with significant projects, capital projects, it takes a significant amount of time to get from, approvals to build to completion. And the sooner we get started, the better, because I don't want to see us wait until it's too late and then the wheels start churning to get it built, because by then it'll be too late. We've already seen the impacts of congestion in and around town. There is certainly, lots of discussion around continuing to build more housing units within town. But at the same time, we need to keep up with the infrastructure to support all of those new residents and homes and in the areas. And so certainly the interchange is one way to be able to address that.
Yes, I'm in complete agreement with Councillor Thompson on this, and think frankly, if in 2015 it was in the 10-year capital plan, we'd be looking at one happening somewhere soon. So I think it's apropos now, given the fact that we have the housing crisis, we have more units being built, greater density, and we need that infrastructure. So I'm in favor of this motion for sure.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Thompson, second topic.
Just briefly, it is implied that, I mean, we don't have the ability to dictate to the region, but I'm hoping that staff meets with the region agrees that there is a need. And then the next step, and it's inferred, but, perhaps council may want to add to this, but that the region and the town would then go forward to the province to get approval for the build and then start to plan out when it can be done. But I just didn't put it in here because specifically because I just didn't feel that I have the ability to direct regional council, but it's kind of understood. And that was the impression that I got in talking with regional staff as well, is that let's just make the push before them and then work together to get it done.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
I just want to reaffirm that I am in favor of the motion. It's a long time coming, and I find that with the region, if you're persistent, then they might lend an ear, and there might be some action. So let's keep on being persistent every year, and if it needs to take a motion every year to do so, then let's do it. And I feel more confident than before that with staff and the mayor being persistent with the regional staff and representatives will eventually be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I'm also supportive. I know we talk about this, I think almost every term, at least once. It's been a push for a long time. I'm hoping that with, and Councillor Thompson, thanks for putting this forward as far as asking for some of the data and projections that are going to support the need for the interchange, because I think that with the changing landscape within our community, with all the growth that has occurred, that I think that the projections and the data will show a much greater need at this point in time than ever before. And so I think it's probably something that the region won't be able to ignore, but also the province won't be able to ignore. And I think it's about time we get the province to step up and finally build an interchange. Mr. Rono, how long has it been since the province has built an interchange?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the last one they may have funded is the one in Vaughan and Teston Road.
Teston Road, yeah, that was quite a long time ago. But hopefully we can get this one done. I know I'll be advocating at the region once we get this data. And Councillor Thompson, thanks for bringing this back to the forefront. Call vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. New business. That one got approved on consent. Councillor Reese, new business?
A question on scope of the townwide parking strategy through you to Mr. Amuno. In that scope, is there any suggestion about residential parking passes on high volume streets where that have been implemented elsewhere when we have parking problems in large areas? So my question is residential parking passes, are they something that is going to be considered in the parking study through you to Mr. Amuno?
Mr. Amuno?
Through Mr. Mayor, so they're looking townwide and they'll consider all options. I'll certainly mention that to staff and our consultants.
Councillor,
something to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, new business?
There. We used to have these little pink cards that gave all of our emergency contact information. We haven't had one for at least a couple of years. Does everybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The cards for the wallet. So in an emergency, I would like to have everybody's contact. It doesn't have to be on a little card. That was nice, but that costs us money, just even having a list of everybody's contact.
Absolutely, Councillor Gardner, and we'll discuss that. And I think that may be even an option, and we'll see to make sure if it's still okay. Maybe we can put it up in the in eScribe, maybe at the top corner where we put a lot of the other information. Maybe we can put something there that just has emergency numbers for everyone. And that way we're not having to waste paper and laminate.
Yeah.
And then if a number changes, we can easily change it because it's on eScribe.
Yeah, as long as I can copy it and put it in my wallet.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah, you'd be able to print it yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We'll get that on that. Councillor Thompson?
I'm not sure whether best to ask Mr. Google or Mr. Nadarozny, but September 21st, Town Square opened. Can we get I guess, a brief update on, how the facility has been received, usage? We've had 11 days of programming. When I drive by, I see people in the square. I've heard good things with regards to the programs and events, but if there's any statistics or information the staff can provide, I'd love to hear it.
Mr. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly we'll be happy to pull that together for you. We are too very pleased with the initial responses to our programming as well as the events that are taking place. So we can certainly pull together some data and statistics of what we know has taken place, as well as the utilization of the cafe and outdoor square images of it being utilized. I know that our intention is to provide an overall summary for council regarding the project, but certainly these initial inputs that have come in for the grand opening, which continue till October 13th, we'll be sure to share that with council.
Great.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallo, new business? No. Councillor Kim, new business. Public service announcement. Councillor Kim. Scalo, no. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner, public service.
I'd like to wish myself a happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you.
Do you want us to sing?
Are we going to do the region? No. Are we going to do the regional report?
We passed that on consent, but if you have a question, you can go ahead and ask now. I'll take it, even though it should have been under new business, but it's okay. Go ahead.
I'm glad to see that we're going to be treating our paramedics a little bit better from what I read here. It says that Aurora is going to get a new paramedic
It's not a
station.
new, they're relocating the one on Edward.
Oh, so the one we have is in the fire department, within the
Yeah,
fire
so
department.
it's gonna
Okay.
move from out of the fire department and it's gonna move on to its own. And right now they're in discussion about where the location will be exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any public service announcement? No? Councillor Weiss, public service announcement?
Happy birthday to Mr. Councillor Gartner. The October is Sports Celebration Month, and I want to thank the mayor for coming forward today and a flag raising. We had I don't know what the head count was, but there are a number of people there interested in the week or the month. And the month will have a variety of things such as a volunteer recognition event, breakfast of champions, athlete and coaches of the year, and a number of other things that the members from Sport Aurora will be putting on during October. So I just wanted to thank you and make that announcement so people can take a look at the stuff on social media and elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Just have a few, as was mentioned, Town Square's grand opening continues. Obviously, there's still a lot of time for a lot of festivities with indoor and outdoor entertainment taking place through Thanksgiving. This week, Alan Cross, George St. Kitts. There's also the Pet Cemetery documentary screening coming up, the Isa Cattle and Louisa Barboza, tribute to Bob Marley, Fiddlesticks, the Beresfords, and there's a lot more. So if anyone wants any details or any tickets, they're available at auroratownsquare.ca. And not everything is happening at the square. We have our Colors of Fall concert, which is happening at Aurora Town Park on Thursday, October 10th from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. It's going to be a tribute to Neil Young. There'll be pumpkin carving and a corn roast. So it's perfect for the whole family. And more details can be found at aurora.ca/fall concert. Also, this Halloween, Town of Aurora is making trick-or-treating accessible for everyone. It's easy to join in on the fun. Just hand out treats from your driveway, consider non-edible options, and refrain from using strobe lights. These are just a few options to help make trick-or-treating accessible and fun for everyone. And to participate and obtain a free lawn sign, visit aurora.ca/treat accessibly. And our Aurora's Haunted Forest is coming up October 26th. It's perfect for those that want to get a good scare as well as family fun for the little ones. I always get scared when they make me do that video. That guy with the chainsaw chasing me. It's pretty scary depending on which route you take. But participate in the not so frightening crafts, games for the whole family at the Aurora Family Leisure Complex. Then hop on the shuttle bus, which will take you to the Enchanted Shepherd's Bush. Wristbands are now available for purchase. And for more information on this spooktacular event, visit aurora.ca/haunted forest. And this year, our Christmas market will be at Aurora Town Square. And so we're looking for vendors with unique, one-of-a-kind and creative products. And the weekend is November 29th and December 6th. And for applications for vendors, please visit aurora.ca/Christmas market. Councillor Gardner, happy birthday. With that, motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Reese, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries.